Hello there, dear brothers and sisters, whichever part of the world you're right now located. My warm greetings, my warm wishes to one and all of you. Once again, it gives me an immense pleasure to meet up with you in this short audio briefing about a specific topic which is quite essential for most of us. I feel in this world of busyness, packed with enormous number of things to be done from the time we wake up and get out of our bed until the time we just get into our bed. We knew not what we are doing. We don't keep an account either. We keep on moving, we keep on running, and we don't take enough time to introspect or retrospect. Introspect is nothing but examining our inward feelings, understanding and distinguishing how we had been performing. Well, whether we may forget or not, the companies where we work, they don't forget. They have a regular practice of something which all of us hate, so-called appraisals. They basically call the employee, done by the managers generally, into a room one-on-one, and they basically examine you in a written format through a verbal conversation, and they tell you how you had been performing, what are the areas you had been basically strong, and where are the areas you had been weak and you need improvements and stuff like that. But how many of us consider this as very essential and this is much needed as a regular practice for us to examine things in our own life? It's much needed, my friends. It's much needed, my brothers and sisters. The reason is life is much, much more important than work. Have you not heard or read in the newspapers how many young people commit suicide? They jump out of a building or they try to kill themselves and luckily they got saved. But the sad part here is the very reason behind all these attempts and the they make to kill themselves is just because of one reason that they have failed to examine themselves at regular intervals. Well, today I did not open up this audio um, to talk about the introspection or retrospection. Probably we can review that in a different study. I've come here with a specific topic and I want to entitle it this way: Are you too strong or too weak? Have you ever asked this question? Okay, before we get into the narration or the description with certain examples, first of all, do we understand this question? Are you too strong or too weak? If you consider yourself as the strongest person in the areas, for example, I have heard some of the brothers saying, brother, I'm a very short tempered person. You think that brother is weak or strong? Unfortunately, he is weak. He's not he's not strong. What you consider yourself to be is not what others look at you. Simple example, since he thinks he's so short tempered and he is a strong person, people who look at him from outside or from his back, they're really scared of him. They feel that he's too weak to handle emotions. He's too weak in patience. He's too weak in self control, right? And unfortunately, this brother, who's basically considering himself to be the strongest, the strong of the strongest, in the floor where he works or at his home, even his own children, his own wife, would not approach him because they knew not when he's going to pounce on them because he considers that he's so strong. Example. Another example, on the extreme side, there are people who consider them to be extremely patient. You yell at them, you even slap at them, they knew not how to react. Even an animal with five senses, you go and basically do something, or even you show the affection, it wags its tails, right? And if you try to harm it, it knows how to, show that dirty teeth with gums, expressing its anger. Hey, come on, you need not, you shall not do this thing to me. Um, but this human being with six senses doesn't even have that kind of attitude to react and be open, little open. You need not be an extrovert, but to some extent, you can at least speak up. and he considers that he is the strongest in terms of patience, in terms of self-control, in terms of ignoring and moving on, etc., etc. This is the extreme opposite side of what we have seen as a first example, the description what we have seen, a person who's labeling himself as the most short-tempered, and this brother is basically saying that he's the most patient. Both are two extreme examples, and they consider themselves as the strongest in their own areas and their own perspectives. But both of them are absolutely wrong, absolutely incorrect. Why they were incorrect? That's a very good question, right? Basically, they were incorrect because they failed to examine themselves at regular intervals. They failed to meet up and catch up with their known, closest, and dear ones, and asking them openly, "How do I perform?" You can ask that question to your wife and children, nothing wrong. You can ask, "How do I perform at home?" Maybe you are a great performer at work. You are the greatest manager. You are the greatest developer. You are the greatest accountant. You are the greatest business marketing agent. Senior director. But how about at home? When was the last time you spoke to your wife or to your children openly, asking them, "Am I spending enough time with you?" I'm just giving examples, right? So the interactions are much needed in life, where you will have to find time, you will have to buy time for yourself, and ensure that you reserve the time as a discipline, as a practice, as a process, whatsoever you want to entitle. And you need to ensure that you spend the time with your family. You may be a bachelor, right? Still, you have something called as relations. Your parents are there. They've invested everything that they had on you, and they're watching out how you're performing, how you're growing up in a career. And you, busy guy, you, busy lady, you don't even have time to sit with them and talk for a minute. They've invested everything, they've sacrificed everything that they have upon you. They've brought you up right from childhood all the way to getting you a graduate and ensuring that you're well placed in a job, etc. You don't have time to spend with them. Why it is important to time spend with them? On one side, there is an aspect of affection, loving care, and all that, but very specific to this title, what we are talking, that's the best opportunity where you can examine whether you are on the weaker side or you are on the stronger side. How? Only when you talk to the other people, they reveal facts about you. What you think about yourself is not what actually happens on the real grounds. You will have to listen to people. Start with the closest ones. Start with your relations, close relations. It may be your closest friend to whom you can openly, you know, talk. But you know what? I have a very strange principle. I pick up my enemies. In fact, I have no enmity with anyone. I try to always, settle down on things and walk in peace. I'm a great believer in that, and it has really brought me good results. However, the other person who considers me as my enemy, I cannot go and basically overhaul his brain or nervous system and say that no, 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 I'm your friend. It's impossible. It happens over a period of time. It's a process. So I pick up those guys. I volunteer. I go talk to them, and basically I pick up on some sensitized topics, not in a way to kindle their anger to the extent they would you know lambaste me or lash out their anger, but gently I would tap things in a way, that it's a technique. You need to basically inculcate the technique to learn more about you through someone. And the best guy whom you can pick is the guy who hates you, is the lady who hates you. You can gently talk to them. You know what? They may talk about 10 facts. Not necessarily all 10 of them are true or applicable. That's where you need to use something called as your wisdom, your knowledge, right? On yourself. You are the best person who can assess yourself. Some people take it on the blind side of totally believing someone blindly. You need not do that. Let them talk. Let them talk. Be a good listener, but carry all that to your home. That's why I said at the beginning, introspection. Spend time for yourself. Examine yourself. Two ways of doing that. One, sitting in loneliness. Second, interacting with people. No, I actually you need to topple the sequence. A, interact with the people. Carry that load of facts. Walk into a room. Please close the door, and then open up your mind. Open up that load you carried, the facts. being bundled in a baggage which people spoke about you, and start writing them down. If you're not having a good memory, I don't have a good memory, I start writing it down in a piece of paper, and I start putting the tick mark and the cross mark at the side of each points. Maybe there are 10 facts, I start crossing 5 facts out of 10 facts, saying that this is not applicable. This guy has totally misunderstood me, and I'm not going to give him a lecture because it's none of my business. Again, people end up convincing somebody, and it becomes even a bigger enmity, even a bigger fight and a quarrel. Don't do that. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. Time will teach them who you are. Time will reveal to them who you are. Maybe the cross marks on their side will become tick marks. Okay, so you cross them out, you strike it out of the paper, the remaining 5, right? You need to basically sit and examine, how you are. For examples I told you, right? It will help you to discover the areas where you're too strong and people cannot come near you. You have to make yourself weaker, meaning you don't have to give up your actual behavior, actual attitude, actual personality, actual talent. You need not lower your standard. That's why I said all those things that would be contradicting to what you think is not right, please mark them as a cross mark. But there are certain tick marks against being completely impatient, being completely impatient to be a good listener. Before even the person would stop talking, you would already open your mouth and give him a big lecture, yell at him, scream at him. Maybe your children, this attitude is not right, and there's a big tick mark. This is what the enemy thinks about you. This is what your wife thinks about you. This is what your children thought about you. You can put a big tick mark, okay, and start working on it. I want to give few other examples, right? uh, People who think they have full of knowledge and they're too strong, and people consult them, they consider them to be the strongest. Sometimes you shouldn't even wait for people to come and talk to you to build their own knowledge. Rather, you can reach out to them. That tells you're filled with some level of pride, some level of prejudice, that you knew everything. Let them come, it's their turn. No, you're too strong, right? The company invested on you. Your parents invested on you. Somebody invested on you. The knowledge didn't come by birth, or on its own. Somebody invested on you. Now it's your time to basically return it and be a blessing to others. You can reach out. You can conduct a seminar. You can conduct a kind of a common forum where you can basically share the knowledge. People will appreciate. Be a blessing. And many other examples I can give, but some of them I want to quickly touch upon. But before that, I want to just tell a quick story. Have you watched a tiger? I've seen one WhatsApp video where the tiger sprang upon a person who was sitting on an elephant, and it bit his hand. His hand is gone. You know how ferocious the tiger is, how powerful and strong it is. I've seen the same tiger behaving in the similar way when it has given birth to its cub. I love watching Animal Planet, National Geographic channels. I love enjoying the nature, God's creation. It's absolutely great to watch. I would suggest you spend time. You may be a great addict to watching MTV's Big Bang, audios with loud noise and all that. Sometimes try this. It'll really help you to enjoy the nature, right? So during that time, I have always noticed something peculiar. I see the fear in the eyes of the tiger. Have you ever seen that? Try noticing it. The All its eyes would be fixed on the cubs. It will be moving from one place to another place, fearing that the own mother could endanger the lives of cubs, putting it in the wrong place. It has to watch for hyenas. It has to watch for the lions, and it has to protect and bring it up. It's the duty of the mother. And what happens is the strong tiger lowers its standards to become weak. The same tiger can go with the same pride to for a hunt, leaving its cub, but the cub's life are put in danger. And the tiger realizes there are times where I have to stand tall as a strong person, hunt for my family, hunt for myself. But there is a time wherein I have to lower my standard to protect my own dignity, to protect my own cubs, which are dependent on me. All right. Um, this also tells us that in society, right? where there are incidents where generally we could avoid, but then we get into trouble, not only causing trouble to us, but to also a family. Getting into unnecessary arguments, unnecessary quarrel, talking about politics in public, talking about religion in public. You need not do that. Lower your standard, make yourself weak, as if you haven't, you know, noticed of all that. But I'm not saying you should hide your feelings. Share it with the right people. Don't get into trouble, right? Um, so then next few examples, if you see, example, I had this problem. I in the city of Bangalore. I think people whomsoever is living there, they knew what is so-called traffic and how much of your patience is going to be tested each day. You take out your car, regardless of peak hours, non-peak hours, it's just going to be flooded with the vehicles. Your patience is going to be tested thoroughly. How do you behave? How do you treat a silly guy coming and, you know, making a kind of a cut right in front of your vehicle and making it apply that brake firmly? And how do you react? These are the incidents. Your character will be tested. Not everything goes well. When all is well, it's not that you are tested. When a person is brought into a kind of an immense struggle, a stormy situation, a rough wave will produce a successful sailor is a known proverb. And a kind of a rough incident, a rough situation will test you. Next example, when in the hospital, see, we are discussing about the title, to help you realize, are you too strong or too weak? If you are going to lose your patience and yell at a person in the middle of the traffic, you are too strong. You need to become weak. Why? It's good for you. The weaker you are, the better it is for you in terms of health. The better it is for others, they can approach you. If you're too strong where you cannot control your temper, control your patience, it's not good for your health. It affects you. I don't want to get into the topic of what's the impact, what's the consequences of your health getting implicated. Just Google and see. Anger can bring what kind of troubles into your body, into your health system. Of course, as a grown-up adults, you might have read in your own subjects, biology, the hypertensions and stuff like that. I don't want to get in there, right? Last example I want to see. Example, you see a person who gets into the hospital, right? And um, on day one, he's going to yell at the nurses, yell at everyone. Why? Because he's too strong. He has not gone through the treatment. The second day, probably he has been put in the trips, and the glucose is getting injected, and he becomes a little tired. If he has been yelling 10 times at the nurses, it becomes down to 5. The day after, maybe they are injecting a little bit of antibiotics, and the guy becomes even weaker, and the 10 times becomes twice or even once. What after a few days? He would not even open his mouth or eyes. He's totally gone. He becomes almost anesthetized or insensitized, and he doesn't even have the energy. Guys, brothers and sisters, what I'm trying to say here is situations that are basically, you know, probing us to react in a strong way. Ensure that you handle it in a way, lowering your standards. As we saw in the tiger example, lower your standards. Don't put your own self and your people that are dependent on you, your family that are dependent on you, into danger, right? You can lower your standards. You shouldn't be acting. You shouldn't be a hypocrite. s- Portraying yourself as a weak person, but inside you're burning with anger and stuff like that. No, that doesn't work. That's why I gave you a very good practice of examining yourself. Interact with your friends, interact with your family. Ensure that you take the feedback, work upon them. Sometimes some habits, right, it may take even 20 years. But the good news is after 20 years, you will somehow be an overcomer. You will somehow overcome your anger. You will somehow become a better person, but you will not take that effort. Even in a million years, you are definitely not going to improve. And the worst part is you will die as a failure. You will die as a person who failed to conquer things. Sad part. People don't even realize that. Okay. I don't know how many of you believe God. I do believe very strongly. Example, you know, the best way, all this time we had been talking from a worldly standpoint. I've been talking like a psychological guru or a psychological doctor, right? And these were truly my experiences. I have practiced them. I would not talk on things that I haven't practiced myself. Okay, trust me. So from the spiritual standpoint, I also felt that Even God cannot work in us if we would not give an opportunity for Him to uh, break us. Examples: there would be certain unexpected failures, unexpected incidents. You think all this happens without the knowledge of God? Very much in control. He's very much in control. Atheists, you can ignore this message, no problem for me. I'm not offensive. But people who believe in God certainly understand that there are strong points where God Himself would interfere and ensure that He is breaking you at regular intervals. Why? Because you're too strong. God cannot work in you until you become a weak person, where you allow God to talk to you. How many of us basically hear that inner voice which is crying loud from within us? How many of us pay attention to what the soul tells, what the heart tells? We go by that? No. We go by our sensations. We go by the incidences. We go by the experiences. We go by the knowledge. We go by the knowledge which we built through interactions or from the media, from the social media. We don't examine ourselves. We don't pay attention to that inner voice which cries from deep within us. And that's the work of God, right? And God sometimes helps you realize, makes you realize. He permits certain things. I don't want to detail too much and get in, talk like a spiritual guru, but I am hopeful that you understood the message. You understood that it's very important for you to examine. Let us do a quick recap. A, you have to examine yourself at regular intervals. How you examine? B is through interactions, spending time in loneliness. These two, A and B, are absolutely from worldly perspective. And the last point, C, from a spiritual perspective, the best way to examine is spending time with God. I spend a lot of time in prayer, reading gospel, whatever religion you belong to. I'm not getting into that point. That's quite a sensitive topic to touch. But you have your own practices to pray, talk to God, allow Him to work in you. And anything that comes as a surprise, as an unexpected incident, do not be dismayed, do not be discouraged. It all happens, it all happens for a purpose. Examine again. The same principle applies to that factor also, right? You have to get into your loneliness, examine, see, find ways how you can overcome, think through it, talk to people if required. Okay, you need not sit in loneliness and conclude that this is the end of it. No, 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 no. From in God's in God's diary, where man says that it's the end of everything, that's exactly the beginning for God, because He is supernatural, He's miraculous, and He's powerful, and He can do things in His ways, in His style. He does things. It's important for you to put your trust in God and talk to Him, have personal interaction with Him. Always stay connected online with Him. you know uh, that way you can basically lower your standards. The lesser you talk to God, the more you trust in yourself, the more you depend on yourself. You think you are stronger than God. You're all capable. You're all capable with skills to handle things on your own. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you, my friends, for listening to me very patiently, and I hope this message is helpful to each one of you. uh, Please don't forget to give your feedback. I can definitely improve on my examples, on the way how I have to correlate things and demonstrate. You're welcome to voice out. Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye.